Wait a minute, I actually really like this movie. What the? Oh, that makes sense. Hi, I'm Zach, and welcome to Great, Not Terrible, the show where we take a look at some genuinely good movies from the not-so-distant past. Today we're taking a look at How to Train Your Dragon, a computer-animated family film which came out in 2010. Now, I'll be upfront, this is one of my favorite films. I've mentioned it quite a bit on this channel, and I did do a video essay on it last year, but I have yet to actually review it properly. Until today. So the movie starts out with a pretty solid action scene. We see the Vikings, the village of Berk, and the dragon threat they're facing. We also start to meet our characters. We've got Hiccup, the self-described talking fishbone, Stoic, Gobber, Astrid, and the other teenagers. We're also introduced to the first thing this movie does so well, which is the music. John Powell's work on this film is widely recognized, and I myself am a bit of a fan. Okay, more than a bit. The YouTuber Sideways has done a piece on just how good this introduction is musically, and I'm going to link that in the description below, but suffice it to say, Powell introduces us to almost every theme that will be used throughout the film in just the first 10 minutes. And it just works so well. Anyways, the village is under attack, but Hiccup manages to shoot down the elusive Night Fury. Later on, he finds the dragon tied up in the woods, but instead of following the Viking tradition and killing it, he has a change of heart and decides to free it. Back in the village, Hiccup discovers he's been signed up for dragon training, which doesn't go very well. He later returns to the woods, where he discovers the dragon is trapped and unable to fly due to a missing tail fin. The next day he brings food, and thus begins a montage where Toothless and Hiccup start to get to know each other, all culminating in this absolutely iconic image. And right here is where we see another thing this movie does so well. While showing the development of the relationship, How to Train Your Dragon has multiple minute-long scenes, with absolutely no dialogue. Instead, the music becomes the dialogue, keeping the audience engaged. This is a very difficult thing to do in film, but thanks to the fantastic score by John Powell, and our growing attachment to Hiccup and Toothless, it just works. So back to story, Hiccup builds a new tail fin for Toothless, which turns out to only sorta work. It still needs someone to control it, so Hiccup builds a saddle so they can learn to fly together. We also see him learning more and more about his draconic friend, knowledge that improves his abilities in dragon training so much that people actually start to take notice. And then we get to my absolute favorite scene in the entire franchise, Test Drive, their first proper flight together. This scene is set to yet another brilliant piece by John Powell, and we see their bond, and flight, reach its zenith. However, it seems all good things must come to an end, and Hiccup is chosen for the honor of killing a dragon in front of the village. Of course, this is not really something he wants to do, but as he's trying to get out of it, Astrid interferes and attempts to turn him in. After some, let's call it coercion, she eventually warms up to Toothless, but their romantic flight is interrupted by a thunder of dragons that leads them to a mysterious island. Here we're introduced to the Red Death, an enormous queen bee dragon that forces the smaller dragons to raid the Vikings for food. They escape and return to Berk, and when faced with a monstrous nightmare, Hiccup attempts to show that the dragons mean no harm. This doesn't go as planned, and he's nearly killed, only saved when Toothless comes to the rescue. Unfortunately, Toothless is captured in the process, and since only a dragon can find the island, he's loaded onto a boat and forced to guide the Vikings through the mist. So now, we finally reach the climax of the film. The Vikings land on the island, but are faced with death by a massive dragon. Before the Red Death can wipe them out, the teenagers, led by Hiccup, arrive on Dragonback. While they distract the Red Death, Hiccup rescues Toothless and reconciles with his father. The Red Death is finally defeated when they use her own fire against her, but Toothless's tail is damaged in the attempt. Hiccup is thrown free and is saved in a desperate last-ditch attempt by Toothless. After seeing this, Stoic and the other Vikings realize the error of their ways, and when Hiccup finally wakes up at home, now missing a foot, we now see a Berk inhabited by both dragons and Vikings. So let's get into what makes this film so damn good. First, we've got the people behind it. How to Train Your Dragon was written and directed by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois, the men behind Lilo and Stitch. As far as I'm concerned, that's a solid resume for this sort of story, and they definitely lived up to their history. They also had some fun source material to work with thanks to Cressida Cowell's book series, though they did take many liberties adapting them to the big screen. The film also features fantastic lighting and camera work. Unlike in some animated films I've covered, the camera is almost never stationary. You get the vibe of real camera operators on an actual set, giving it a much more dynamic feeling than your average animated film. The lighting is also extremely well done, much of which can be attributed to cinematographer Roger Deakins, who was on as a consultant. There's also the animation itself, which is frankly excellent. For starters, the world of the characters are extremely well crafted, and hold up very well today. They also took their time on the little things. For instance, instead of the typical propane torch fire we see from your average fictional dragon, every dragon's fire is unique to their species. There's also these incredible smoke sims on display in the final battle scene, which were honestly mind-blowing on release and still quite impressive today. I will admit, there are a few places where the animation shows its age, including some areas where the lighting really doesn't hold up to newer films, but overall, for a movie that came out over a decade ago, it is still aged very well. There's also the soundtrack. Now, I have been a musician for a good chunk of my life, so when I say that this is one of the best film scores I have ever encountered, that means a lot. John Powell did a wonderful job on this score, and the film wouldn't be nearly as good if he took it away. Side note, I may or may not have spent nearly $130 last year on a scorebook and deluxe edition soundtrack, but it was worth every penny. Every single piece just serves its purpose so well. As I talked about earlier, the tool Powell uses most throughout the score is theme or motif. He introduces themes early and then uses them throughout the rest of the film, mixing them together and changing keys and tempo to fit the necessary mood for a particular scene. The directors also specifically asked Powell to use unique sounds in the score, and Powell really took this to heart. We get such unusual instruments as slate marimba, Hardanger fiddle, zopilka, harmonium, Irish flute, and most notably, Scottish warpipes. This use of bagpipes is particularly prominent, and my friend Film Score and More has talked about this extensively. I am by no means a music YouTuber, so I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but you should definitely check out his video linked in the description to learn a bit more. Yes, I did just spend multiple pages gushing about this film, but there is a damn good reason for that. This is objectively a very good film. It has consistently received high praise from audiences and critics, and to this day appears on lists of the best animated films of all time. I have friends who don't really watch animated films who have absolutely loved this movie, and it stood the test of time beautifully. It's just one of those films that puts a smile on your face. Do I recommend you watch How to Train Your Dragon? Hell yeah! This is a genuinely fantastic film, and it's 100% worth a watch. Anyways, I've been Zach, and this has been great, not terrible. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded. I've been suffering from a combination of upper division engineering courses and lack of motivation. Expect to see more reviews of mediocre movies in the near future. Hopefully. Thanks for watching.